sponge right now and just kind of listen in to everything. And I hope I could provide some perspective to you, because I was exactly where you are now 20 years ago. I'm aging myself. In 1992, I graduated out of high school, so most of you guys be graduating in 2013, 14, I guess. And if you recall, in 2000, about 20 years ago, your parents might recall this if you're in the United States. There was a tragic event that happened in LA. You might have heard about that. It's called the LA Riots, and in Korean people call it Haigu, right? And you didn't have that in your lifetime. You did have 9/11, tragic event. Those type of events, unfortunately, kind of spurned some of us, it spurned me to get more involved in civic activities and public service. And what I thought is, tell me something about some of your previous speakers. What type of speakers did you have? Go ahead. Am I the first? Oh, great, it's even better. I'll tell you something. I know your parents want you to be successful in life. I think your parents probably want you to go to college and get a good education and become a successful professional. Am I wrong about that? Am I right or wrong? Right? Sometimes they push you really hard. You got to study, and things like that, right? And I'll tell you, I don't know if you know, I'm an attorney by training. I studied accounting. I'm a CPA, but I actually went to law school, and I practice law. So what I thought I would do is take this opportunity to tell you what I found, because I am 20 years ahead of you, and what you should be expecting as you progress in your career out of high school, going to college, and then to the professional world. I thought that'd be most helpful, and how you could use what you learn in this program, the leadership program, and how it's going to help you be successful. Not like me. I don't consider myself that big of a success, but successful in your life and the impact that you're going to have in your career. One thing that's kind of unique, I think, I would speak to you about is I'm a Korean American, just like you. And every day I struggle with my identity. I think a lot of you do as well. And when I say that is, how many of you guys born in the States? Okay, a lot of you. How many immigrated? Okay. I was 9 years old when I immigrated. My wife was also Korean American. She was born and bred in New Jersey. So you have different perspectives on this. But I think this is the perfect time to talk about this issue, because it's very important. It's fundamental to who you are, your identity. Because right now we have the Olympics going on. It's a perfect example. When you see sometimes Team USA competing against Team Korea, who do you root for? Korea? Why? Well, I mean, it's okay. Why? Is it because the majority of the athletes look like you? Right? Am I right about that? You have same-sounding Korean names? Your parents root for them? But we live here in the United States. Why not the U.S.? And we'll get to that in a second. But the reason being is, being Korean is very important to your identity, your self-identity. And the fact of the matter is you can't ignore that, nor will anyone ask you to ignore that. So in the professional setting, and I'll talk to you about my journey. I don't know if you know what I do for a living, but I practice law in a large law firm. We have $250 million in revenue. I'm a partner. I'm an employer. I hire and fire people. And I didn't get here just by sheer luck. So I'm going to tell you the struggles that I had going through where I am, and things that you're probably going to look for as you go through. So I want to talk about three things today. One, I want to talk to you about who you are, and what you'll face, and then how you can overcome it. This is kind of informal, and I like to speak in a small group like this, very informally, especially to you 1.5 and second generation folks. If you ever heard me speak before with Korean parents, a lot of Korean parents, I give the political speech. I'm not going to give you the political speech today, so rest assured. I want to tell you something about when I found out that I was Korean American, Koreanness in me. I grew up in a small town in Florida called Apopka. Back then it was very small. It was a suburb of Orlando. Population about 100,000 people, so it's much smaller than Atlanta or even Johns Creek. Korean population, probably about 4. In high school, I was one of 3 Korean kids. My high school was 2,600 kids. My middle school, I didn't have any Korean friends growing up. There was no ESL program. Back then, I did attend Korean Catholic Church. It was maybe 20 families. All my friends were non-Asian. I didn't even have Chinese friends even. So when you start hanging out with your friends and you start learning English and you speak in English, and you start speaking English to your parents, what you start thinking is you don't see the Asianness because you don't look at the mirror, you look at your friends, right? And your friends are white. You're forgetting that you're Asian. It's natural, it happens. Your experience might be a little bit different, given the fact that you live in Gwinnett and Fulton County. You have a lot of Koreans and Asian Americans, right? So, fast forward to my senior year. I've always dated white girls growing up. It's kind of funny that I actually ended up marrying a Korean American, but I had a girlfriend that went to another high school, and she was very pretty. I really liked her, you know. And what ended up happening was we would obviously, since we go to different high schools, and we didn't have Facebook or Twitter or Skype or what's that program on iPhone these days? FaceTime, right? Didn't have anything of that, you know. So you would see each other maybe on just on the weekends, you don't know what's going on. So she would come over, you know, we hang out with my friends all the time. And, she was my prom date and everything, which was great. And I think they have it here too. Every senior class, they have this field trip at night to Disney World. I think they go to Six Flags here. It's called grad night. I don't know if you guys ever did that, right? You heard about that. So we go to grad night, and I'm sitting there. We're sitting in front of the Mad Hatter's teacup ride. I don't know if you guys remember those teacup rides. There's a bench right there, and we're like, hey, she's like, oh, your friends are so cool. I'm like, I know. I think so. And then it just hit me. I said, hey, why don't we hang more with your friends? And then the answer she gave me kind of changed my life. She said, she was trying to put it gently. She goes, well, I don't know if you could handle the fact that you're different. I don't know if they could handle the fact that you're different. And that's what she said. And I said to myself, like, well, wait a second, because I never saw myself as different, right? But at that moment, for some reason, it just kind of shattered everything I knew. That's who I am, because I always thought that I was sane with my friends, because you don't see the Asianness. But just that one moment, for some reason, it just completely changed my perspective of the world. Well, if you think about it now, it's because it's the fact that she thought she couldn't handle the fact that I was different, not necessarily that her friends couldn't. And you can kind of get over that. But the moral of the story is, it changed my perspective on who I am. That was the first time I felt like I was an Asian American. Prior to that, I always felt like I was American. No difference. Maybe the food's a little different than I eat at home. So ever since then, I realized I've struggled with this. I too rooted for Korea during the World Cup, in the Olympics. There's an innate desire to identify with people who look like us, who speaks like us, enjoy the same culture and things like that. But in America, right, for some reason, despite the fact that we being Asian Americans and Americans, that we're perceived as somewhat of an outsider. You may not feel that way in your high school. How many Korean kids are in your high school? A lot, right? I think Chattahoochee has a whole bunch. North Fulton probably has. But the fact of the matter is, you're right now in a sheltered environment. Because when you go to the professional world, You're going to have your concentration of Korean American friends going to different professions. When you enter the world of anything but medicine or engineering, you're not going to have that many Korean American or Asian American contemporaries. And that's the fact. Why is that? Let's think about this. Why is that? Partly because historically, being immigrants, our parents have encouraged us to study and become doctors, because that was like the epitome of success, right? Your parents told you, go study and be doctors. Who says, go study and become a politician? Anybody? Any parent? No. Now there's more of, or go study and become an internet entrepreneur, computer programmer, engineer, which is another good one, right? How about law? There's a lot more lawyers. My parents encourage you to become lawyers. Anybody? Anybody? Right. My parents didn't. They wanted me to be a doctor. And what I realized is, once I graduated high school, my senior year in high school, and sitting in front of the Mad Hatter Tea Party, teacup ride, that the way I was thinking about the world and myself had completely changed. Completely changed. The reality is, America is very unique because of its citizens are in fact different. And I point this out in the Olympics. I was seeing a retrospective of the USA gymnastics team in 1996. You guys are way too young, but you might have seen this. The first female gymnastics gold ever won by the US team in 1996 in Atlanta here. I was shocked to look at the demographics of the USA gymnastics team, right? So you had like, I don't know, these names might be familiar to you. You had like Amanda Bolden, blue-eyed, blonde-haired woman. Dominique Dawes, an African-American woman. You guys remember Amy Chow, an Asian-American woman. Dominique Luciano, a first-generation immigrant. Think about that. Think how diverse that team was. When you go to something like Team China, you see the same group of people, or Romania, or back then, Russia or Serbia. You see, it's very similar. And the reason I point this out is because when you look at what America is, it is its difference, and that's what makes it so unique. At the same time, as you go through your life, you'll hear this term called the glass ceiling. Anybody know what that is? In high school and in college, you'll feel glass ceiling. Glass ceiling means, professionally, you do the best you can, and for some reason you can't go any further because it's a glass ceiling. You can see that there are higher floors, but for some reason you can't go through. Glass ceiling. That term was coined by a sociologist, referring to women who couldn't go past a certain level in a professional organization, like a company. For Asian Americans, there's a term that's coined called the bamboo ceiling. I don't know, I mean, you can't see it through the bamboo, but I guess making it more an Asian thing, then you do that, the bamboo ceiling. And the fact of the matter is, you think right now that because of you are, in fact, Asian or Korean American, that there's something that's preventing you from going through that, to achieve. I'll tell you why. There is a disconnect between Korean Americans or Asian Americans, minorities in general, with the outside world. After I got elected to the Georgia House, the first term I was there, in 2011, I had a veteran legislator come up to me and ask me, where are you people from? Now, listen, that's just a common Southern saying. There's no racist motivation behind it or anything like that. Where are you people from? Meaning, where's your family from? What's your ethnicity? I mean, that's very common. The reason he was asking was not because he was interested in where I'm really from. I told him, well, I'm South Korean. My ethnicity is South Korean. But I live in Gwinnett County, Millburn. says, no. You know, I was asking because of the Japanese earthquakes. Okay? This is a veteran legislator, people who are making laws to govern your life. Okay? Japanese are okay. So I repeated gently. I'm South Korean. You know, Japan is like, it's a little bit away. And the fact of the matter is, there's nothing, you know, it was a Democrat, by the way. Not a Republican, a Democrat. The fact that there was no malintent or something bad about his motivation. What he demonstrated was that he just didn't know. And he's from South Georgia, and the question is, how would he know unless you told him? Right? There's a misunderstanding between groups. When I started as a young associate at a large law firm here called Alston & Bird. Alston & Bird, and we call it AmLaw, like American law firm, they call it 200, meaning 200 of the most profitable American law firms. Alston & Bird was one of the big ones in the top 50. Big, one of the IBM Tower Downs. And I was an associate there. I started, and one of the things bad with business casual, when professionals start wearing not suits but business casual to work, cool and lawyers, you can't tell who's who, right? If you're an attorney, you would think that you wear a suit. So I got an assignment with it from a partner, from our higher up. So I went to a different floor that I usually don't sit at. I go there looking for a partner. I look like I'm lost because I've never been on that floor before. There's a secretary that came up to me and said, "Hey, are you from dispatch?" I called downstairs about my keys in the car. And the reason being is they've never seen an Asian American lawyer in that firm before. Fact of the matter is that firm has 900 lawyers now. Back then it was about 300 lawyers, and they really didn't have any Asian Americans. So the perception is I wasn't an attorney. Now I could have gone, you know, and be mad about that and say, "Oh, those racists." The fact of the matter is they were never exposed to that. So every time I went down there, I generally said, "No, I'm not from dispatch." I didn't tell her who I was. But every time I wore a suit, I went down there just to let her know, you know. But there's a reason I bring these stories up. Times are changing, but there are people who are not used to seeing us in non-traditional professions and roles. That's the challenge you're going to have. You know, when you go to a hospital and wearing scrubs, people are going to assume you're a doctor. I guarantee it. Maybe you're not a doctor. Maybe you're a nurse. A lab technician. Doesn't matter. Because there's a dichotomy here. There's some people who are non-Asian who think that you are the model minority. That everybody's good at math. Anybody good at math? I wasn't. Anybody else good at, you know, I couldn't draw, I'm not good at music. But there's a myth out there that your SAT scores have to be, what is it now, 3,600 was perfect? There's a myth. There's that one side. And then there's actuality. A lot of us, we're just like everybody else. We struggle. The same thing. Some people can't do calculus. They still can't do calculus. So how do you reconcile that in a setting when the people don't have enough information about who you are? There was a book called The Outliers by a guy named Malcolm Gladwell. I don't know if you guys ever read it. Okay. If those of you read it, there's an interesting passage in there that I'll quote. I'll tell you a story about it. He actually goes into the circumstances surrounding, there was a crash of the Korean airline into a mountainside in Guam in the 80s. You guys are too young to remember that, but it was huge news. Huge news. Ask your parents about it. And Malcolm Gladwell actually, you know, takes apart the voice recorder device. You know, they're recording all the communication between the pilots and co-pilots. Remember, international flights, you have to have more than one pilot. Matter of fact, you need to have 3. My brother-in-law was a captain for Delta. 3 pilots. How in the world mountainside with 3 pilots? You know, what he found out, and Malcolm does a very good job of this, is that the captain is the one actually flying the plane. And you'll say that, you'll notice as well. The co-pilots actually recognized that the captain was making an error. And then he described why, the captain actually didn't have enough sleep the night before. He was making an error. And instead of correcting the captain, saying, pull up, the co-captains and the pilot just sat idly by. Now, who would do that in here? No? Maybe not? Well, let's think about this from a cultural context, okay? Your parents will probably talk to you about, even if you're born, a minute later from your sibling, if you're a twin, you still have to call that person Anni or Oppa, right? We're young. Am I right about that? What about people who necessarily just graduate from the same high school that you did, but a little earlier? You have to call them Sanbenim, right? Am I right about this? You have to give a certain amount of respect to them. Because in a Confucian society like we've grown up in culturally, we respect the elder. Sometimes it doesn't matter if our parents are being absolutely unreasonable. It's unfathomable for us to question that authority. Am I right? You don't talk back to your grandparents even though they may be senile. Right? Apart from being just being respected. So that's what's going on here in that plane crash. The captain was making a mistake. But because we're culturally programmed not to question someone who's more senior, the co-captains didn't call him out on it until it was too late. And then, boom, we crashed. A lot of people died on that plane. And the reason I point this out is this. Let's take an example, all right? How many brilliant scientists, Dr. Pack, Dr. Kim, do you know that works at the CDC or a researcher at a large corporation? You guys know, you guys related to them, who live in the United States, they're professionals. Am I right about this? You guys know a lot of people who are very smart, very brilliant, right? How many of those people are in middle management today? They're brilliant. Why aren't they running the corporation? You ever ask yourself that? Man, this guy is a genius. He's going to find the cure for AIDS. How is he not on top of the food chain? Why is he stuck in middle management? The reason being is they're culturally programmed to just work very hard, right? You work very hard, and somebody, you believe in merit, so you work very hard, and somebody's going to actually notice our talents and promote us. Isn't that what our parents told us? Isn't that what your parents tell you? Study, 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 and you get good grades and you move up. Am I right about that? In school, that is true. In professional life, it's not so true. In February of 2012 article, a magazine called Diversity Inc. For those of you who don't know, Fortune 500 is referred to as the 500 most profitable companies. You'll see some of the name brands of that, right? Coca-Cola, General Electric, Yahoo, Google, all these big companies that you know, right? So there's 500 of those companies, okay? I want you to know, in 1995, do you know how many non-white CEOs ran the Fortune 500 companies? Take a guess. How many? In 95, zero. Zero. In 2012, how many do you think? Take a wild guess. 200. 5? 19. Today we have 19 non-whites running Fortune 500 companies. Okay? Now how many of those do you think are Asian American? 0. No, that's not true. 5. 3 is close.
2. 4.
Less than 10. Definitely less than 10. I could count on my hand maybe 3. We have Jerry Yang at Yahoo. We have Vivian Wang at Avon, which is the Fortune 500. And outside that, I don't know who else. Okay. They're not Korean Americans, they're Chinese Americans, right? And Jerry Yang really doesn't count because he kind of built that company on his own. And that's less than 4%, 19 out of 500, less than 4%. There's 27% minority population in the United States. And you ask yourself, why in the world are, let's be stereotypical for a second. Why in the world, us brilliant Asian Americans, why aren't we at the top of the food chain? At least that's what's perceived, right? By the non-Asian. We study well, we're brilliant, yet we have less than 5 running Fortune 500 companies. Let's bring it come closer. My law firm, we have 550 lawyers in my law firm. Okay? We have 3 Asian partners, despite the fact that our home office is in Philadelphia, a northeastern state. And 2 of those partners in Atlanta. 2 out of 5. You ask yourself, what's going on here? It's because we're programmed not to ask for what we want. There are some areas that we are in fact getting ahead. And the younger generation know this, right? We're actually leading in, TV has changed a lot. We have Korean American actresses, Asian American actresses you see every single day on TV. Matter of fact, Hawaii Five-0 remake is built for Korean Americans, although Grace Park is a Canadian Korean, right? Music. I think we see lots of music coming over. K-pop is getting big. We have girls' generation making appearance here. I saw on the article the other day that song Gangnam Style being viral. I mean, I never thought of that. I never thought of that. I saw it on Facebook. But you ask yourself, now, majority of you guys are not going into entertainment. Maybe 1 or 2, well, that's great. Majority of you guys will go into the professional world where there's only 4% of CEOs are, in fact, non-whites. So, what is it? What are some of the things that you could do to overcome that? What you could do to kind of change the course? I feel like I could share something with you because I'm kind of the anomaly in this situation. You know, it takes a lot. I overcame a lot culturally to actually run for office. That's a tough thing. I mean, you open yourself to criticism. You know, as Koreans would value our privacy a lot. I mean, it's a rough kind of transition, but I just did it, right? And I've realized